Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our virtual discussion, The Enemy of Strategy Execution, the Quarterly Fire Drill. Kind of a dramatic title, but it's a topic that we talk a lot about with clients and also within our organization. So we're excited to bring it to you today. My name is Nellie Miller, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Empower. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping logistics. We would love to hear from you throughout today's conversation, so please use the chat feature. Provide a question or an observation or comment, and we would love to include it in today's conversation. After our presentation today, you will receive a recording of it, so you can watch it on demand and or share it with colleagues who may not have been able to join us. And lastly, our Culture of Strategy Execution series does continue after today, so I'll share more about some of our upcoming events at the end. So I'm excited to introduce our team today who's joining us for this conversation. Wonderful colleagues and members of our leadership team. First off, I'd like to introduce Dave Franklin, our Chief Technology and Operations Officer. Dave provides the overall leadership, strategy, and direction for Empower. A lifelong problem solver, he has more than 20 years of experience serving in information technology roles. He brings innovation, creativity, and passion to his work as he leads our team in developing new, meaningful, and more efficient ways in which to use technology to enable organizations to plan, execute, and transform. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Nellie. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's good to see you.
Yep, glad to be here.
Great. Also joining us is Andrea Gibbs, the head of our strategy services. Andrea oversees our strategy consulting, facilitation, and coaching services at Empower. For more than 2 decades, she has helped facilitate planning sessions, working with clients to help create a business plan that is motivational and achievable. In addition to teaching students at the graduate business level about the importance of solid communication and team collaboration, she is a big believer in the effect of culture on an organization and works with every client to understand their unique capabilities and goals. And I know strategy and strategy execution are her passions. So we're excited to have you join us. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Nellie. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Also behind the scenes is amazing technical support from Brittany Ray, my colleague in our marketing department, who is our digital marketing team lead. Thank you, Brittany, for all the work that you're doing. So let's go ahead and get started and just dive into today's topic. Picture this, it's the end of a quarter. It's time to review what your organization or your department has achieved. And leadership sounds the quarterly fire drill. So Dave, take us through what this looks like.
Sure. I think it's important to understand, when we talk about a quarterly fire drill, kind of why that happens. And from a leadership standpoint, as an organization, you've created your strategic plan, or you've gone about the course of your year, and they're trying to understand what's going on. They're not in the day-to-day like some of the individual contributors are within the organization. Perhaps the reporting that they get isn't quite where they need it to be. So let's bring everybody together and get the answers to solve all of the world's problems. Are we on track with our goals? Are we off track? What do we need to do? What do we need to change? From the perspective of the individual contributors on the team, they're oftentimes frustrated with this process because they're in the thick of things in doing the work every single day, and they've got to drop what they're doing and prepare a bunch of reports that's providing information up to the leadership that perhaps they don't even understand why it's being asked for in the first place. And they're seeing more complex problems that they think they should be tackling, in their normal course of the work.
Right. So it sounds like we've got the two perspectives. We've got the leadership perspective where there's a disconnect there. They're not maybe understanding what's happening throughout the organization. So it's the end of the quarter, what's going on. But then we have the management and the team perspective of the folks who are doing the work and not understanding why they're being asked to maybe answer some of these questions and how it really connects to the overall strategy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So why is this such a fairly common practice? Why are these quarterly fire drills so common?
Well, a lot of times if you think about it, when this occurs, it's again because leadership is oftentimes trying to find answers to questions that they just don't know. And by doing that, they're actually looking backwards and trying to get information that's already occurred in the past. But they're not necessarily thinking about what's down the road and the windshield in front of the organization or down the road in front of the organization that's going to really affect them. They're measuring what happened, and they're expecting everybody to tell them the answers to these questions. And I think that happens when we start relying too much on dashboards and internal reports and things of that nature, and then stop thinking about our strategic plan for what it is. And that's really a piece of infrastructure that grounds the entire organization. The strategic plan is our road. It's where we're going, it's what's on the horizon, and it's the guide rails for the organization and how they have to operate in order to get there. And sometimes we lose sight of that, being caught up in the day-to-day. One last point is, I don't know about everybody's organization, but everywhere where I've worked in the past, we've never been flush with resources. We're always trying to do more with less. And that causes people to be a lot of the time, even in the management level, very heads down. So they can't focus on what they need to. Throughout the course of that quarter, they almost have to pull themselves up for air and figure out, all right, what did we just do? Was it good? Was it bad?
Right. Well, that's well said. I appreciate those comments, Dave. And I think certainly we call it a fire drill. It's kind of putting out fires, and that certainly begs into that whole how it feels to be living that. So thank you for that perspective. Andrea, would love to understand kind of what your thoughts are.
Well, when I think about the quarterly fire drill, I think about a company I used to work for, a large Fortune 100 company. And we used to do something very similar to this. This company literally was my inroad into learning how to do strategic planning. They were fabulous at the planning. The execution of it was a little bit more difficult for them. And I say that because these quarterly fire drills would happen. We'd call them dog and ponies. And everyone right before the dog and pony would take a week of the quarter to get ready for their dog and pony to present to the big boss, whose name was Ray. And the big boss was a bit of a bully. And so what happened was the quarterly fire drill was as much about how much better the big boss and smarter the big boss was than everybody else. And it not only put sort of fear into the hearts of, am I going to be the one that's out there, left hanging in front of everyone while the big boss points out why my data is wrong. But it also, in addition to the cultural damage that it did, it was always looking back, as Dave said. And it didn't allow us to marshal the organization when somebody needed help, to be proactive about what might be coming up for the organization in the future. So it was exactly how not to execute a strategic plan.
I think that's really well said. And boy, that sounds certainly messed up. To live through that would have been really challenging.
I'm really glad things are different now.
We are too, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned, and I think I know we see it as we start to work with clients. There's a lot of emphasis on the planning portion and the strategy behind, getting the strategic plan in place, and then the strategy execution sort of as an afterthought. And so speak to that, because that's not the right way to look at it, right?
Well, again, if you're looking to, if the guy or gal at the top is looking to show how smart he or she is, if it's all about catching somebody without the right data, you're missing the point of why you're measuring and looking and asking these questions to begin with. The point is to be able to be proactive and to be able to get out in front of your customers and your marketplace and have the solutions that they're looking for.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, we would love to understand all of you and your experiences. So we have a poll question for you to take. So it's going to come up on your screen, and we're just going to ask you to take it real quickly. So the question we ask is, how often does your organization run quarterly or annual fire drills of reporting goals and financials? So how often does your organization run fire drills? Frequently, sometimes, or never? And we'll go ahead and just wait a moment as people answer.
I'm fascinated to see what the results are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. So the answers, overwhelming majority, 83% have said sometimes, and 17% have said never. So, Andrea, what's your reaction to these results?
When I look at this, I think to myself, we're moving in the right direction, right? internal cultures are changing. People are realizing that looking backwards isn't going to help them plan for their future, isn't going to help them anticipate some of the quick changes that happen in the marketplace in today's world. So it looks like what we might have is a hybrid time. The exciting number to me, although it's lower than 83, is 17. That means people are really starting to say, you know what, we gotta really look at this differently.
Yes, absolutely. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree as well. I mean, it's great to see that nobody is doing this frequently. Certainly, based on how we described what a fire drill is, if you're doing it all the time, then your organization is probably going to struggle to get a lot of traction. With respect to the 83% saying sometimes, I think it's also too important to call it, going back and measuring our progress isn't a bad thing inherently. It's something that we all have to do, and we have to look back and see where we were. But the more we can continuously ingrain that into something that happens as part of our daily course of action and our daily routine, so we can understand what those numbers say about where we're going. I think that is the most important part as we evolve. So it's nice, again, as Andrea mentioned, to see some of that switch over from frequently towards the never column.
Yeah, and it certainly plays into what you both have touched on as the being proactive, and that's really what it's all about. Great. Well, thank you so much to all of you for taking our poll. I do want to remind you, we have the chat feature. We would love to hear any other questions you have throughout our conversation, or any comments or observations that you'd like to share. We'd love to see those as well. So let's go ahead and move on. Andrea, it seems to me this is certainly a cultural issue. And so how do we go about changing this cultural problem?
Well, as you know, I get all excited about culture. I agree with the oft quoted quote of culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think there are some exceptions, but in general, I think it's true. I think one of the most important things about this is to ingrain into the organization that you want to be proactive. You want to be able to course correct. You want to be able to help the organization see what's coming and make the adjustments and alignments from within, as opposed to having to do that retroactively. One of the main benefits of doing this not as a fire drill, but as a something that you monitor, is the ability to see things in real time. So you can see problems and you can see opportunities sooner, because a lot of times if you wait till the quarter ends, it's too late. So you can take advantage of this real-time information, and to communicate those shifts and adjustments to your whole teams allows them to all of your teams, rather, not your whole teams, but all of your teams, allows them to adjust and align their efforts. So you have to be able to encourage people to adopt the tools that will make this communication, this alignment, and this quick shift and pivot much more easy than a static document that you would generate during a planning process.
I like how you also mentioned in your remarks that, looking for problems is always the first thing we're looking for. What's going wrong? We always want to be better. And so looking for those lessons, but also looking for opportunities. I think that's something that may not always be on people's top of minds, that you can look for both, and using that real-time information helps.
Absolutely.
So in using that real-time information and how critical it is to the process of strategy execution, can you give us an example of an organization that really benefited from using real-time information?
Well, I think the one that comes to mind, just sort of off the top of my head, is I worked with a public library. And if you think about public libraries, their product, or their service rather, is, in today's day and age, with this digital transformation that we're all making, we're moving from hard books to getting information, getting stories, getting things out into the computer, getting people connected from a tech perspective in computers. And so they were watching their data for computer usage at their location go like this, while they were watching the checkout level of books go down like this. So that kind of data that they received allowed them to make some pretty interesting changes to get ahead of that curve. So changes in location, changes in how they spent their budget. They got more computer terminals. They did more training on how to get onto the computer. They did really watch that data as it went up and down, and it allowed them to be where their new clientele wanted them to go. So
thanks for that example. It sounds like not just looking at data points, but they were able to identify some trends using the data.
absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you. Great example. So, Dave, Andrea just spoke about the critical cultural shift and how we change our cultures to change expectations and behaviors around strategy execution. We know technology can solve this strategy execution challenge. We've got the perfect software solution and services, right?
That's right.
Yep. But before an organization even looks to technology as a solution, what are some practical first steps that they can take right now to change their organization's expectations around accountability and alignment of their strategic plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and as a technologist, I will say that, it's certainly something that should be on the forefront of people's minds when we think about all the different solutions of technology solutions that we do use today to help power the daily work that we do. It seems like a natural fit that we would start thinking about the most important thing to an organization being something that would be monitored, tracked, and executed upon in technology. But that said, certainly not everybody has the necessary authority to go right into their organization and say, hey, we're all using this software platform now. So I think from my standpoint, one of the most important things to start thinking about when you are thinking about the strategy of the organization, how you respond to it, how you see the data that comes in on a daily basis, is to take a step back, think about the things that you're asking your team to do. Do they relate to the strategy of the organization? If they do, have you communicated that to the team so they understand? And the team understands their place in how they're making that strategy come to life. So just that daily communication can be one of the first things that, even if that's not normal within your organization as a whole, if you start that out in your team, you can plant those little seeds that, as Andrea mentioned, culture, that will start to grow and germinate and maybe help have that communication and transparency culture start to grow within your organization. And when you're doing that, you're actually looking at things that you might otherwise only look at quarterly on a more frequent basis, and using that to help guide the decisions that you make with the lens that it's in the best interest of the organization strategy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dave. I think your comment about communication makes great sense. Adding more communication is a natural progression to looking at something more than just once, more than just quarterly. So I think that is great advice. Thank you.
Right. Yeah,
We are going to ask another poll question, our second poll. Speaking of technology, we're curious to know, does your organization use technology to manage your strategy execution? Yes or no? We'll go ahead and wait as people take.
How come you didn't have heck yes?
You're
Of
right. We should have
course.
had that as an option. Right.
You needed it, of course.
Okay.
Look at
So
that.
right now, we have 80% of our audience has answered with yes, and 20% has said no. Dave, what are your reactions to these answers?
Well, it's exciting. Like I said, I'm a technologist, so I think about how we use tools all the time. So hopefully the 80% are using our solution.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is to think about the differences. If everybody uses some sort of technology product to help manage their strategic plan, even if that product is only a Word document or an Excel document or something like that. But what we should ask ourselves is the product that you're using enabling you to just record it in one place, and then you go back and look at that over time to see where you are at in progress to the plan? Or is it a living, breathing solution that works with you and for you to help you understand not only your progress as a leader or as a contributor towards that plan, but the progress of everyone across the organization who has a role to play as well.
Andre, what are your thoughts?
I'd pick up exactly on what Dave was just saying there, Nellie. I think that the most exciting thing about technology is in this particular application is that, before, when we did strategic planning, the leadership team would go off to a retreat or whatever, and they'd come out after, sprinkling magic dust and thinking amazing thoughts, and come back, and the leadership team would know, and maybe their direct reports, but it sort of stayed living in a PDF document somewhere. To Dave's point, when you are able to cascade down those plans and involve the organization so that they not only know what the plan is and you've communicated it to them, but they can see themselves in the plan. They can see how they're contributing to the plan. You get a higher level of engagement, and you get a higher probability that you're actually going to achieve your strategic goals. So I find that number 80% super exciting.
I'm hearing you both say communication quite frequently. So I think that is a huge takeaway for all of us as we think about what tools we're using and technology. And if there's a strong communication piece to it, it sounds like that's really necessary. So we didn't necessarily define technology, but we have a comment in the chat that I'll share from Richard. He says, we do measure our progress towards our goals in Excel today. It works better than nothing, but we still have the stop and measure approach. They work hard. We have to obviously drop everything, take time, go into a shared file. So as a result, we usually don't, they fail to achieve all their goals. And so speak to the Excel use of strategy execution. Dave, I'll start with you and why that can be so problematic.
Yeah, thanks for Richard for the question. I think that lines up, really well with what I was starting to talk about a little bit earlier. When you have a document like Excel, which has your plan, it by nature is not something that lives in front of you at every point in time. You have to go back and you have to look at this file, maybe update things on a manual basis, maybe read it a little bit more closely to see what somebody else changed that might affect you, but you don't really know what they changed unless you go back and read through the whole document. So it's an inefficient method for storing and tracking information that ultimately is critical to helping you and your organization succeed. If you think about the systems that we've developed over time, not us as Empower, of course, but as other solutions companies have developed, we have systems for tracking projects. We have systems for tracking our financial books. We have systems for tracking doing email and team communication, and certainly video communication like this which has become ultra prevalent over the last years. All of us find ourselves no longer working in an office. So in order to really bring something to the forefront that helps you act on the information in a meaningful way, if you bury it in an Excel document, it can be hard to see. So systems that are purpose built for those types of things are ways to help you elevate the visibility within your organization.
I mean, half the battle is just trying to find where the document is, like which file, which folder, where is it, which drive, right?
Well, and it's also not, as Dave mentioned, you have to scour it. It's not real-time information. So you're going in there and was this true the last time I looked at this, or how about this, or who's added to this since I've been there? Because it is a point in time document, you can't both be in there working at it at the same time. So, technology platforms that are built for strategy, you can literally have real-time information, unlike a static Excel document.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks. Well, thank you, Richard, too, for that comment. Again, if anyone else has a comment, please feel free to provide it in the chat. But we will go ahead and move on. And, we have talked about the fact that we have a technology solution. We're very proud of our solution. It's called Empower Envision. It's strategy execution software, and it helps people achieve their strategic goals and strategic plans. Ultimately, our software and services create transparency, alignment, and visibility around your strategy and its execution, which ultimately supports a culture of strategy execution. And that's really one of the outcomes we're looking to help our clients achieve, is that culture of strategy execution. Our services also provide some great support, and through our consulting services, facilitation, and coaching, we can kind of meet you wherever you are in your strategic journey. If you're just looking to start your plan, if you're looking to maybe freshen it up, maybe you want to create a vision statement, maybe you want to freshen up your vision statement. All these things are foundational to your strategy, and we can help you along the way, certainly with our software as well. We're here to help, and we love hearing more about clients and organizations' experiences, so we can all be better at strategy execution. In regards to our resources, we also have a wonderful collection of complementary resources on our website at empower.com. You can see blogs, guides, templates, again, some of the things that I just talked about in regards to strategy planning. We can kind of get you on the right course, and we're certainly happy to help you along the way. So Andrea, I'm going to have you go back to the previous slide. I forgot to mention that we've got contact information for Andrea and Dave. They would love to keep this conversation going. We'd love to hear, successes, challenges, things that you want to share. So feel free to reach out to them via LinkedIn, and also their contact information, so we can certainly share stories and learn from each other. I mentioned in the beginning that our series continues. We have other events coming up. So they actually continue this month with a coffee chat, Overcoming Strategy Blind Spots, that will be happening on March 24th. And as well as another conversation like today's conversation on a different topic, but we've kind of talked a little bit about, hinted at, data, real-time information. And so this conversation will actually speak to leading versus lagging, how to prioritize key performance indicators, or otherwise known as KPIs. And that'll be a great conversation as you think about the data that you're looking at and the trends you're looking for. So I have a couple last questions that I just want to kind of throw out before we end today. Dave, sometimes when we talk about technology, there's a lot of different solutions. You kind of mentioned that for a lot of different business challenges. So adding another platform can sometimes be overwhelming to an organization. How would you dispel that idea in regards to why you should look into technology for strategy execution?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess as I think about that, I think towards the way that we've used technology in our lives every day, and that technology has become kind of ubiquitous or invisible. I always say that the best technology is invisible, because you use it and it actually helps you instead of works against you and causes you to do more work. It enables you to do things faster, quicker, better. People use their smartphone all day long because sometimes they just like to play games, but sometimes they use it because it helps them be able to process information faster and be able to respond to colleagues faster and do the work that they need to do in a more efficient way. So the key is to find systems that help you do that. We take a lot of pride, obviously, in Empower Envision, and we take great pains to make sure that it's a platform that very seamlessly works within the ecosystem of software that people are probably already used to working with, such as email and Microsoft Teams or Slack or communication software like that. So we've designed it to be able to serve a purpose that actually makes you more efficient. Because if you're not using Envision to manage your strategy, you're doing it in some other way anyway. You're writing notes on a notebook, you're managing in a Word document. So it's a new system, yes, but by the same token, it helps you be better.
I like that notion of the invisible. It should be invisible, and that's really powerful. Yeah. So it's more the question of, it's not just another solution, is it the right solution? And that's certainly right. You spoke really well to that. Andrea, one last question for you. When we think about cultural shifts, we know that can sometimes take time. How would you answer or speak to someone's concerns about how much time it would take to really, right the ship, correct your path in regards to moving away from quarterly fire drills, and how much effort that could potentially take?
Well, it's hard to tell, give a time frame, Nellie, because every organization is different. I think it's important that you start with the leadership, and that the leadership makes a commitment to begin to say, you know what, we have to take an active role in making sure that A, we achieve our goals, and B, that we're able to shift and align as an organization when changes come up over the bow. I'm an old sailor, so I like the boat analogies. And I think that once the leadership team is on board and they're able to then look out over the organization and say, who are the influencers, the decision makers, and things that are on not only our direct reports, and their teams, but to the individual contributor level, who are the people that are carrying our culture forward, and how can we get them involved? Because when you take an organization, and whether it's somewhat flat or it has many, many levels, spreading that idea of, what, we need to do things differently has to happen throughout the organization. It can't just be driven from the top. You have to go out and get what I would call your lieutenants to help you make that cultural shift.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. That certainly helps give some good perspective. So before we end today, we do have one last question, but we're not going to have you answer in a poll, but we're just going to leave you with this thought, and you can think about it as you continue with your day-to-day. But does your organization report on the work you're actually doing? Think about the next steps that you can take to start working on strategy more frequently than just once a quarter. So on that note, I want to thank Dave and Andrea. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Nellie.
Yep, thank you.
And Brittany, as always, thank you for your work behind the scenes. We really appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, thank you to all of you for joining us. We always enjoy bringing you conversations about strategy and strategy execution. Please reach out to us, check out our website, and we will see you next time for our next conversation. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.